Oops. Whatever. Good morning, and now you've seen my morning face. And welcome to another exciting episode of Breakfast with Unity. I'm your host, Max Moreau, and we're going to be doing stuff today. So, what we're going to do first is just set up a very basic explosion setup. So, first of all, I want to show you in the documentation that what the first example we're going to be doing is almost exactly as what we have in the documentation. So if we go to Unity, what is it called? AddExplosionForce. Oh, the second thing is not working. That's funny. So the basic use pattern is you get a bunch of colliders using physics overlap sphere, and you give each collider an AddExplosionForce. This is because AddExplosionForce doesn't like create a force object in the scene or something. It literally is a call that you give to a rigid body to say, hey, an explosion happened over there, and we want to move you. But because of that, it means that you have to actually iterate over all of the things that you want to be forced. And so in a typical scenario, if you want a grenade to like blow all the physics objects around, you're going to use a physics overlap sphere to actually get all those objects. So let's just do that real quick. So we're going to create a new script, C# script, and we're going to call this, what should we call this? Let's make it so that we can explode on a button press so that we can test this. So let's do explode on button. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to do public string button name equals fire1. This will give us a good default for our button because that's a default value that's already built into Unity's input manager by default. You can, of course, change it, but I recommend not. It's nice to have these sometimes. So public string button name, we're going to do a public float force, and we'll set this to 100. Public float radius. Let's make that 5 meters, 0.0f. That's a big explosion, really. And then public float force, public float radius. We're going to do a public force mode. And I think that's all we need. So what we're going to do here is in update, because this thing is going to explode whenever we hit a button. This is just going to be a magic little test script. We're going to do for each collider call in overlap physics dot overlap sphere, and we give it the position of transform form dot position, the lowercase, those are local transform, and float radius. So we're just going to use radius. And this will give us a list of, well, it returns a array of colliders, and so we're going to iterate through that array right now. Like if we mouse over this, you'll see that the return here is a public static collider array. So now all we need to do is add a explosion force to all this stuff. So the most basic way is just add explosion force, col.rigidbody.add explosion force. And we're going to give it the float. The force is force. The explosion position is transform dot position. And the explosion radius is radius. Now there's another one you can add. No, we just want radius. Where did that come from? Radius. And then finally we can add a force mode. So I'm just going to throw that in force mode. And this is all we would need, except for if we really go based on all colliders. If you have colliders that don't have bodies, this will cause some problems because we're asking for the rigid body here. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that that's not the case. So if we do if col.rigidbody does not equal null. So this will hopefully make things happen. So I'm just going to put this on a, we're just going to put it on a sphere in the middle of the world so that you can see where the explosion is going to be coming from, just for right now. And we're going to, what are we doing? We're going to, I want to lower the main camera. And go ahead and create a light. And then we need some objects to push around. So I'm going to go with some cubes. So we're just going to create some cubes. I'm just going to speckle them throughout the area. Probably should have just written a quick random spawn. Or wait, do we have a random spawn? I think we have a random spawn, don't we? Yeah, for camera shake. Spawn randomly. Let's just do that. Yeah, alright. That'll be easier. So I'm just going to take one of these cubes. We're going to make a prefab out of it. We're going to use our explode spawn randomly script, and we're going to put it on the sphere, and we're going to make it so that the sphere... We're also going to put our explode on button on the sphere. And the spawn randomly, let's make the distance, since our radius was 5, let's make it 5. And let's make the delay 0.1. So it'll start spawning cubes real quick. It might be too quick, we'll find out. So I'm going to delete all these. Actually, I'm going to delete this one too. And we're going to go back to our sphere and make sure that our cube is in the spawn randomly thing. So here we go. We're going to hit play, and we have a problem. So, something it didn't like in here. So I'm just going to delete this and add it so that we see what we got. Float explosion force, okay. Explosion position, transfer that position, that's fine. Float explosion radius, that's correct. And force mode, that seems right. Huh. I'm going to hit save one more time just in case this isn't saved. Okay, we still have a problem. Float, vector 3, float has some invalid arguments. Cannot convert, okay, it's the same. Wait, no. It's not. What is, why can't I read all this? Unity engine force mode expression to type float. Was there another thing in here that I wasn't paying attention to? So, float, explosion force, explosion radius, explosion position. Oh, there's an upward modifier. And then force mode. Okay, so we need to get rid of the up. We don't care about the upwards modifier. Actually, let's go ahead and just expose it. Upwards modifier. And we'll make this 0 by default. What this is for is if you do explosions, you want them to kick into the air, you can apply additional force upwards. It's just kind of built in because it's really common practice to do so because it looks cool. I think that's even what they say in the documentation. So it should like it now, right? No, it still doesn't like it. This happens sometimes, especially in the morning. So we're looking force, transform position. Oh, wait, where's my radius? Radius. It must be early. Alright, save and hit play. This will work this time. Alright, and then we'll get a whole bunch of like cubes, hopefully. So there's the cubes, and if I hit control, very little seems to happen. Z, do we? Oh yeah, that's because none of these things have rigid bodies. So if we go to the cube, and we go to inspector and we add physics rigid body, and then I'm going to turn off use gravity for now, but we definitely don't want to turn on is kinematic because otherwise this still won't work. Oh, and it's working. And that's because we're doing this every update as opposed to only when we do if input.get button down. If input.get button down, button name. Then we do all this stuff. Save. And I'm going to go back to the sphere, and I want to actually change something. The force mode should probably be impulse on this one because it's instantaneous what we're doing. We're just doing it for one frame. So here we go. And if we hit control, they all fly away. There we go. So it just creates this explosion thing and sends them rocketing into space. So that's a basic explosion. So let's look at another thing we can do with this. One of the cool things is we can actually... so we already had this as a continuous thing. I'm going to actually recreate that again, except for I'm going to call it something different. I'm going to call this continuous explosion force is what I'm going to call it. And now this one, so this one we did an update because we want to catch the input, and generally you want to avoid doing too much stuff in update that's physics related. In this case, this is actually probably the right way. You could also potentially have this set a bool and then in fixed update do the actual physics kick, but this will work just fine in this case. The one that we're going to do now, this continuous, is going to be more important to actually do that because we're going to be applying this every physics update, and so it will look better if we do it on the fixed update, and it will have less problems. So we're going to call this continuous explosion force. I'm sure I spelled that wrong. Probably both times. So we're going to switch this to fixed update, and we're going to get rid of the button requirement. And this is going to be exactly the same otherwise, and we don't need the button name here. So now you can do this to create like repulsors, basically. So if we get rid of our explode on button and remove component, and then we go into continuous explosion force and put this on here, we can put the force, this is now appropriate for force, or acceleration, either of the continuous ones. So if we hit play, we see that we're causing the spheres to just repel, which is exactly what we saw before. So that's kind of cool. But the thing is, you can actually just make the force negative 100, and you now have a gravity well. So if you hit play, there we go, we have a attractor. So you can use explosion force for things other than just explosions. You can kind of play with this in different ways. And the important thing is, all it is a force that you give it a position, and it attenuates the amount of force based on the distance. And so this is our nice little mass of cubes just flying towards the thing. And I think because it has the radius, anything that gets outside of the 5-foot radius ends up getting escape velocity and just going off into space. So I'm going to call that a good episode. We're going to save scene. We're going to call this AddExplosionForce. I'm going to create a folder called AddExplosionForce. And we're going to get these added in there. And I guess I should put the number. Yeah, we were numbering these things for some reason. All right. So, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you had a good time. I know that I did. And I'll catch you, it's Wednesday, so I'll catch you tomorrow morning for another episode of Breakfast with Unity, and be sure to catch us Thursday tomorrow at 8:30 PDT for a full episode of 2D Thursday, where we continue the stick fighter game, the Fight Go Right. Thank you for joining us, and you have a wonderful night and day and morning. Just have a great one.